Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
And we are the Youngs.
And we're so glad you've joined us today. Thank you so much for your patience last week. We had some things come up.
Yes, we did. And so we went back into the archives and pulled out an old one. And
Yes.
I always enjoy those, though, because sometimes I forget that we've covered that. So I'm
Right.
like, oh, would you look at that?
Right. And our producer is just very patient with that. He also had some things coming up. So he was able to go back and choose something. And I think it was a blessing. I hope it was a blessing. And now we can continue in our series, Books That Can Help and Why.
Yes, and I hope you've been enjoying this. I know I've heard several people feedback. Somebody wrote me this week and said, we are, I think they said like 5 chapters into Sheet Music by Dr. Lehman.
Ooh.
And so I was like, okay, that's going to be a blessing. And so it was just a good little comment there. And so we're always happy to hear from you. You can reach out to us anytime. And I know we often hear from you. People comment on things on social media. And sometimes we don't reply to all of those just because there are so many different ones that sometimes they get lost in the shuffle, or they get, by the time we find them, there's 15 or 50 or 60 of them, others ahead of them.
That's
now.
true.
And so be patient with us on that. But we are always honored and happy that you join us and that you have just stayed with us for these almost 5 years now.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And I was going to add to that. Thank you for reaching out when you do and just telling us that the program was a blessing to you. I was reading actually a couple of those just this week, and there were some emails also that we had that are definite questions. What do we do about, or can we get some counsel on? So I was headed into those. And so I did not get to just message the ones back who had just said, hey, this was a blessing. Thank you for doing this episode. So I do want to say thank you for reaching out when you do and giving us positive encouragement. We appreciate that too, even if we don't get to message you back and say, hey, thanks for listening.
Well, if you hear us very much at all, you'll know that we love books. And you've heard us say many times, I'm sure, those of you who have been with us for a long time, that we try to read marriage books and family books and bedroom books. And we're just always using the materials and resources that are available in our generation to help us to advance and learn and improve.
Right.
And so that's why we came up with this idea to do these books that can help and why. And right now we're looking at the book called The DNA of Parent-Teen Relationships, Discovering the Key to Your Teen's Heart, by Gary and Greg Smalley. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a book that, is almost, it's over 20 years old now. And I think it was written back, maybe in the last reprinting may have been 2005 or some such. Mm-hmm. It has been such a good book, though. And since it has been 2 weeks, let's just review briefly what we covered, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And what we did is we talked about just the subjects he tackles. One of the things we liked about the book was that he has these sayings versus different quotes at the beginning of every chapter. We did like that.
Yeah.
And then we looked at just all the different subjects he tackles all at one time. Everything from how to make the teen years the best years. That is an excellent chapter, and we believe that. We really do. I think it was Dr. Bill Rice III from Bill Rice Ranch in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, whom we heard speak years ago. And basically, or maybe it was just in a personal conversation, he said, teenagers should be a great blessing in a family. And if you train them well when they're younger and they're on the right path and they're obedient and you've taught them to have a grateful heart and all of that, you'll find that the teen years can be really phenomenal years.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've believed that.
Yes, and we've enjoyed every stage of our children's lives. But the teen years, I know a lot of parents they go into that with a little bit of fear and trembling, and there's no reason to do that. If you are working on training them and having a relationship with them, the teen years of your children can be amazing.
One of the things you'll like about this book is that he just deals with some very practical areas that most parents of teenagers are at least concerned about or dealing with. And how to keep anger levels low, how to argue with a teen and come out as closer friends, finding the best solutions to conflicts, how democracy brings responsibility to your home. And even in the later chapters, he talks about how to help your kids through the hard times, how to deal with purity issues, even gives some steps towards the idea of dating and what that looked like in their family. I look forward, we'll have to do another in here in coming weeks about that one. And also then he talks about what do you do if your teens are walking away from God. and how to help them leave the house with honor. And so it really covers so many areas. If you were with us 2 weeks ago, we did cover chapter 3, talking about keeping anger levels low. Is there anything there that you think would be worth our maybe reviewing a little bit for those who it's been a couple of weeks?
If you are putting yourself on the maturity level of your teen, you are not behaving like a parent. So don't enter into a conflict with them on their level. Come at any conflict, any issue that comes up with your teenager, come at it from the perspective that you are the adult, you are the parent, and handle it in that way.
With maturity. What are some verses maybe for helping that? A soft answer turns away wrath.
Right.
That's a book of Proverbs. And James 1:19. Let every man be swift to hear. It is important to listen. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath.
Yes.
Any others come to your mind there?
Be kind one to another. The Bible does over and over, and to be tenderhearted towards your teen. When I hear parents talking to their kids, just in the grocery store or out and about, even sometimes, unfortunately, at church, you hear parents snapping at their children and being bothered by their children. And the Bible does say that we are to be kind and tenderhearted towards one another.
Most of us have seen a child who is looking at their parent's face. And they're concerned because maybe mom looks, down or looks angry,
bothered,
or dad looks bothered. And we've seen little ones do that, but teens are especially aware of that.
Oh, yes.
And so moms and dads, one of the things he taught in this chapter was to relax your facial expressions, just to relax them and even to smile, even in the middle of an issue, to relax your facial expressions, to smile as you speak, maybe to start with love. To say, all right, we're not seeing things here eye to eye, but I love you. Relax your facial expressions. This is just a great chapter.
That just made me think of, this isn't towards our teens. Well, sometimes it could have been, I guess, towards the children, but I am one of those people who, whatever I'm feeling on the inside does show up on my face. And David he's very helpful with that. And so he would jokingly say to me from time to time, instead of relax your forehead, because I would have those lines, you get between your eyes when you're stressed about something or upset about something. Instead of relax your forehead, he would say, unlax your forehead. But anyway, and sometimes in the moment, I would be like, you unlax your forehead, buddy. I wouldn't say that actually out loud, but I would want to.
But I could read that on her face.
But it is true. It was a good reminder for me that even though I might not be saying the words out loud to my children, how frustrated I was or stressed out or whatever, they could tell. It was all over my face. So this is a good reminder for us as parents.
Absolutely a good reminder. So let's jump into just a couple other chapters here to look at. I thought maybe we could talk about chapter 5, how to argue with teenagers and come out as closer friends. That just sounds almost intriguing a little bit. And he gave some thoughts here in the beginning of that chapter. I guess 5,000 adults they had polled and asked what they wish their parents had done differently during times of conflict. And here were the top 3. They wish their parents had listened more. And I think sometimes moms and dads, we can belittle that a little bit, but teenagers, I really believe this. Teenagers, sometimes a teenager who is heard, when we just listen to their concern, when we hear what they're frustrated about, our world is so stinking busy, and there's always another reel demanding our attention. There's always another social media post that we need to read. If you got the TV on and, the TV's distracting, if you've got your TV and your phone, you're doubly distracted. If you have your TV, your phone, and your computer, you're triple distracted. It's just the world we live in. And taking the time to very simply just listen, to put everything down and listen, is what 5,000 people said they wish their parents had done. And that's worth our thinking about. There were 2 others they listed there. What were those?
They wish they could have talked about their feelings more.
Now, I could be wrong, but I think maybe those were the ladies in the group. You think?
I don't know, because obviously I am not a male, and so I can't speak for how guys would think about that. But I do know, being a parent now, and then remembering my teen years, I do know that teens have big, big, big feelings, and they don't always know what to do with them. Sometimes they hide them, they push them way deep down inside. Some of you may have teenagers like we did in our home. We had both of these, some that would stuff them way deep down inside, and then some who wore them proudly outside. And so sometimes as a parent, you recognize the immaturity of it. But if you remember as a teenager that it was very real in the moment, that is their perspective right now, that maybe someone was unkind to them at school, or maybe they got a bad grade, or maybe something exciting happened that to you as a parent, you're like, that is no big deal. Why are you so excited about that? Or maybe a coach, didn't pick them for a starting lineup or something like that. And you as a parent are thinking, down the road, this isn't going to matter. When you get to college, this isn't going to matter. Or when you have a family, this isn't going to matter. But to them, it's huge. So I would say, yes, as a parent, you should remember that their feelings are really from their perspective, and I would say are valid.
That's a good point. And I'm thinking back through having teenage boys, as well as our teenage daughters. And it is true that the boys are less apt to speak in the terms of feelings. But I'm looking back here, sitting here thinking, I do remember that many times when we were on a trip, I always said, when you're working with boys, or you're side by side, or it's after midnight in the dark and you're traveling somewhere, that boys will often then do speak in terms of feelings. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that does go both ways.
Well, and I would say out of our boys and our girls, our boys tended to, not all of them, but some of them tended to show their feelings a lot more than our girls would. And there are seasons of life for girls where they just cyclically, can I say, in a cycle, they have highs and lows, and that is to be expected in a household. But our boys, they had some big feelings, and
I guess that makes sense too, because even as adults, the Bible does warn our men, husbands, to love their wives and be not bitter against them.
Yes.
So men, it's worth our thinking this through, because feelings affect men in apparently a very powerful way. And so here's what they're saying there. Out of all these adults, what do you wish your parents had done differently during times of conflicts? Wish my parents had listened more. Wish they could have talked about, the audience said, I wish we could have talked about feelings more. And they wish they had talked to their parents more.
Right.
And you know what? That is an interesting one, because we have a Christian school here at our church, and I've traveled and spoken to teens all over the world, literally. And I do meet, if I get to talk to the teens one-on-one, many times teens will acknowledge that.
Right.
Mom and dad never talk. We never talk.
Well, and I wonder if that third one, I wish we had talked to our parents more, I wonder if that would be easier if the first two were in line. Maybe if we knew, if I know that my parents are going to listen to me, I will go talk to them. If I know that my parents are going to not necessarily validate my feelings, but at least hear them out and then give me some direction for them, then maybe I would talk to them.
He mentions two areas here where I think all of us can learn from. The first one is so simple and yet so easily overlooked. Begin by listening. And I just quoted James 1:19.
Yes.
And maybe that's why it was fresh in my mind, because it was here in the notes. But let every man be swift to hear, quick to hear, to be willing to listen.
Right.
And how important that is. And he lays out under there, sometimes we don't know what to say to connect to our children's emotions. Listening is the key to that.
Yes. And I wonder sometimes as a parent, maybe you're not out there thinking, oh my goodness, I don't have time for this or whatever. And we don't come at it from that perspective, but to our children's perspective, maybe that is what they're thinking, because we are busy. I know in my life, and we have Charity living in our home right now, and she will soon be 17, I am busy. And so either I am deep into a Bible study that I'm preparing, or maybe I am on the computer ordering something, or maybe I'm busy about housework, and she will just be chattering. And sometimes I have to just stop and either say, hey, sweetie, can we talk about this in just a minute? Let me finish this email or whatever it is. Or, hey, sweetie, I am so sorry. I wasn't listening. Let me put this down. and you tell me. So I think it's not necessarily bad feelings on the side of the parent. It's just a lot of busyness.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So here's a couple of things he says here that we ought to talk about. He said, first of all, sometimes we don't know what to say, so we listen. That's part of the battle. This is an interesting one. Real communication doesn't occur when we understand the other person's words, but when we understand the other person's feelings that underlie those words. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's excellent. That could be that could be applied in many different relationships, whether you are dealing with a counseling session, whether you're dealing in marriage, and certainly here with your kiddos, your teenagers. You don't want to just hear their words. You want to know what's going on behind those words. And sometimes, as we said before, those are big, big emotions, big, big feelings, maybe a small root of bitterness that's already starting to take root in their heart, that if you're just hearing words and you're just off the bat, just right off the top of your head, well, this is what you need to do about that, and then moving on with your life as a parent, then you could miss something really big in your child's life.
He does give a couple of illustrations about that. And one of the things I remember him saying in the book was that his daughter had come home and was talking about some class. She hated school. She hated some class. She hated going to school or whatever. And basically he just jumped in and was like, well, should we homeschool you? And she got really mad at him and kind of stomped out of the room or whatever. And the point being that she was saying something, he heard the words, but did not hear what was really in her heart.
Right.
And one of the keys to that, moms and dads, is to listen, but also then to ask questions. Take the time to hear them all the way out. Just listen and let them get it all out, and then ask questions about it.
Right.
So tell me more about that. Or, what are you hoping will happen there?
Right.
Is there something you think you could do to help with that? Or, and so the more questions you can ask, you begin to understand the feelings that underlie the words. And when you get those feelings nailed down, you are having real communication with a teenager.
Yes.
And the thing about that is that some people will say, well, that just takes so much time. But honestly, I believe, and he makes this case in several chapters, that once we learn to communicate on a proper level, it takes less time.
Yes.
Because we end up having a conversation over and over and over and over and over, and we never solve it, and it gets bigger and more frustrating and more irritating. That takes more time than taking the time to listen, to understand, to ask questions, to get to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
So it's a really good one. So the first thing he says we can do is begin by listening.
I agree.
And the second thing he says then is that we have to allow the emotions of our teenagers to touch us. Allow their emotions to touch you. And he lists it almost, it's almost when you look at the list, it just seems kind of cold and sterile. Take time to feel their pain. Take time to feel their sadness. When people feel emotionally understood, they feel cared for. And he didn't, as what I just said a moment ago, effective communication is ultimately more efficient and takes less time than other methods of communication. But how do you think we would help? How do you let their emotions touch you? What would that look like?
I would say, first of all, by truly listening, putting your phone down, actually looking into your child's face, allowing your heart to actually tune in to what they're saying. Because often we parents are really good at hearing our child and hearing maybe the overarching story of what they're telling us, and then giving them a quick answer and moving on with our day. And then we don't really hear everything that they've said. So asking the Lord to, okay, Lord, yes, I'm straight in the middle of all of this stuff, but help my heart to hear what Charity is saying to me right now. And then tuning into it. The caution here is to allow their emotion to touch you, but don't let their emotion overtake you.
Or control you.
And control you. So you as the parent, don't, first of all, react to it. Like if your child is angry about something, don't automatically be like, you just need to calm down. What is your problem? Don't then take their offense on you. If your child is like, oh, this teacher just doesn't like me, don't take their offense on you and automatically turn on the teacher. ask questions. You be the adult. Don't let their emotion rule you, and then help them with their emotion. But if they know that you actually were touched by it, you do know. Like, yeah, I know that would be really hard to have a teacher that you feel like doesn't like you. Why do you think she doesn't like you? And asking those questions, then your child knows, yeah, you're really hearing me. You really have my emotion and my heart in mind. But then you as the parent taking these emotions and guiding them in the right direction instead of the way parents do these days and blow up and cause all kinds of a mess over at the school or whatever. Give your child biblical help and direction.
That's excellent. He does list 4 destructive ways to argue. And these are worth our thinking through. When I continually withdraw from an argument, that's destructive.
Yes.
Because nothing is solved, and it only makes the issue bigger or more difficult, and it will come up again. Yeah. So withdrawing is a bad one. Letting an argument escalate into hurtful name-calling fights. When moms and dads, you let it escalate to now you're mad and you're storming and you're making accusations and your kids are throwing accusations and now everybody's up. That is a very unhealthy way to fight.
Well, and can I say you're acting like a toddler? If you as the parent do that, and if you are letting your teenager act like that, then both of you are acting like toddlers. And
the key to that is a quiet voice.
Yes.
To simply say, hold on a minute. And you, in intense moments, you lower your voice. Mm-hmm. And it is designed, we are designed by God to respond to a quieter voice in a different way.
Right.
Belittling or invalidating each other in an argument. When sometimes we are listening to a discussion and so we throw out all the reasons, well, that's stupid, that is dumb, that is not valid, stop thinking that way. You have no right to say that. Well, the fact of the matter is they do feel it. Mm-hmm. So embrace that. They do feel it. And certainly don't belittle. Never, if your son is struggling, I know about a coach that would sometimes say, hey, you playing like a girl out there. Well, you just belittled your teammate.
Right.
And parents, if you do that to your son, what's wrong with you playing like an idiot? Don't you know how to play soccer and still play basketball? Can't you do better than that in volleyball? I mean, what in the world? Well, you're belittling. And when you're doing that, you would hate it if people treated you that way.
Absolutely.
And when you treat your teenager that way, you are separating yourself from your teenager and driving them away. Believing that a family member is trying to hurt, frustrate, or cause fear on purpose. That's a very unhealthy way to argue. Because if you believe that, if it's true, it needs to be dealt with. But oftentimes a family member is just needing to talk. They're just needing to get things out. They're frustrated about something. Right. And so those are destructive ways to argue. Mm-hmm. And I can see those. And this is the chapter. Many times you've probably heard us talk about on our podcast what he has called drive-thru talking. And it is just a method that almost sounds trite, but it does work. And I've shared it with more than a few couples in my office. And drive-thru talking is an emphasis on listening without saying anything and then repeating what you heard and doing so in a non-aggressive way.
Right. And I think, this is just from my perspective, but I feel like this makes a great deal of sense to a male mind because it is a method that you can grab a hold of and that does work so that you are listening. And then you are saying, this is what I heard you say. Did I hear it correctly? And then allowing that person to repeat.
So what you're saying is it's too logical.
What I am saying is I feel like women already get this and we don't need a method. So as a mom, and I'm just saying from my perspective, as a mother, it is easier to... as the nurturer, and I'm not saying this is across the board because there are some moms who just don't have time for their kids. And I know that sometimes I don't have time and I'm not being perfect here, but I know as the nurturer, as the way that God created women, we are able to sit down and if there is a huge issue, okay, we need to sit down, we need to solve this. We're going to be hearing, and not necessarily solving while we're hearing.
Well, but I think what he's talking about here is not the solving side, but the responding side.
Right.
And I do know that maybe that does apply more to ladies because typically a lady will respond with emotion.
True.
Because God designed women to be more emotional.
Right.
And so I do think it can be applied to both husbands or both moms and dads.
Right. And
regard.
I'm not saying, I just, David he really, really likes this illustration, and it's a good one, and it gives couples or parents something to hold on to and say, yeah, that's a good idea. We can use that method. At the same time, in my heart, I'm like, I don't really feel like I need that method.
And I do understand that. This method, though, is written for people who are struggling. And when you have a family that is arguing all the time and a couple in our office that is arguing all the time,
right.
Typically it's because there's defensive and then point counting.
Yes.
So the husband will say something to his wife and she gets, that is not how that happened. Mm-hmm. So there's an interruption. No, that's not how that happened. Mm-hmm. And we see that all the time in a counseling session.
Yes,
no,
we
you're
do.
wrong. You are wrong. And then, she responds and cuts up in the middle, jumps in the middle. So nobody finishes their sentence. And before you know it, then there's an argument going on that probably doesn't even have anything to do with the real hard issue.
True.
So this is a little cold. It is a little clinical and sterile, but the idea is if you're having trouble communicating with a teenager, this is a method that he lays out that says, okay, try this. Think of it in terms of, if you're speaking, I will say nothing until I feel like you're finished, and then I will try to talk only about what you raised up.
Yes.
And he does it in the terms of the drive-thru because, when you drive through the drive-thru, you place your order, the person on the other side repeats it back to you. Mm-hmm. If they get it wrong, it means you've got to redo it. Right. And so it's a sense of trying to understand each other and allowing the other person to talk. So I think it's a good method.
It is. And then the drive-thru method also, it points out you're just talking about your order. That is the only thing you're talking about. And sometimes when emotions get involved, yes, you talk about 40 different things.
Yeah, because if you place an order and the guy on the other side says, well, that's stupid, then you're probably pulling out of the line and leaving that restaurant.
Yes.
And yet we do that all the times in discussions and conflicts when we are talking with our teenagers. And so it's a good chapter. I recommend this book highly and have enjoyed so much. There's things in it that I don't agree with, but everything that I agree with, I think is just really good.
Yes.
And chapter 3, keeping anger levels low, and chapter 5, how to argue with teenagers and come out as closer friends. We still need to talk maybe a little bit about chapter 6, about how to find the best solution to any conflict. That's pretty good. Chapter 7, democracy bringing responsibility. That one intrigued us. I can't wait to tell you about that one. And then probably just zero in on maybe the last one a little bit on how to leave the home in honor, helping our children to leave home. Mm-hmm. And the reason I think we ought to talk about that one is because we are living in a culture now that kids don't leave home. And we even have this new social, word being thrown around, the hub son. That's a cross between a husband and a son who doesn't leave, but kind of does the responsibilities domestically as a husband, takes care of the house, takes care of things for mom, helps with the dishes, the cleaning, but he doesn't have a job. And so he's kind of his mom's caretaker, even though he's 20-something or 30-something. And so that's a really good chapter because our goal as parents is to help our children grow up, leave as successful adults.
Yes.
That is our goal as parents. Okay, well, I guess we're out of time. Any final thought before we shut off today?
I don't think so. I thought that was good.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us here. Of course, you're listening to the Keeping It Young. You can find us online, keepingityoungpodcast.com. And we have every one of our almost 300 now podcast episodes available on that website. And just a ton of material. If you like the podcast, if you enjoy it, make sure to tell somebody about it. Share it and like it. Subscribe to it on Spotify, all the different sites, Apple, iTunes, all of that. And we'd love to hear from you. If we can help you, feel free to reach out. Whatever you do, make sure that in the week ahead, you serve the Lord with gladness.